Hey guys! Today I'll be showing you how to backup files with AhsayACB using Windows. So, if you want to learn how to backup your files, folders, photos and videos, docs, PDF files, or whatever file you want on Windows, then keep watching. To start with, double-click the AhsayACB icon from the Windows desktop. This will prompt the AhsayACB window. Enter your login credentials to access your account. Then click OK. As you can see, you're now on the home screen of AhsayACB. But before being able to do a backup job, you'll need to create a backup set first. So, click on Backup Sets. Then click the plus sign. You can rename your backup set or you can use the default name provided. Then click Next. Now it's time to select folders or files you aim to back up. My Documents is selected by default. If you want to back up specific files and folders, you can unselect this. Then, click on I would like to choose the files to back up. The Advanced Backup Source window will open. Here, you'll see local destinations for you to specifically select the files and folders you want to back up. Once you collapse any of the available locations, you'll see the main folders as well as the subfolders. You have to tick off the Show Files checkbox so files will appear. Let's click on a folder. This means you can now select specific files instead of just selecting a folder. In my case, I'm selecting the main folder 0219 for this backup set. This automatically selects all the subfolders in it, including all the files within these subfolders, such as Excel file, photos, videos, PDF files, audio file, etc. for backup. Unless you want to exclude some, you're free to unselect whatever folder or file you want. Click OK to continue. Then click Next. Click the switch button to turn on Scheduled Backup. A scheduled backup will automatically back up the files and folders you have selected based on the frequency and time you set it on. This is very important as a regular scheduled backup will minimize data loss, ensuring you can always recover the most updated version of your files. Click on the plus sign to create a new backup schedule. You can use the default schedule name, but for this example, I will use Daily Backup at 1800. Next, choose from the different types of backup schedules such as daily, weekly, monthly, or custom. For this example, we will select a daily backup to run at 1800 hours. This setting is considered as the normal backup schedule, setting a certain time as to when the backup job will run. Now, if you change when the backup will start from at to every, this is called periodic backup schedule. Periodic backup schedule will automatically back up your data every 1 minute up to every 12 hours depending on the interval you will select. The smaller the backup interval, the more frequent the backup job is. This ensures that changes made are captured regularly, which allows greater flexibility in recovery to a point in time. However, backups running at very regular intervals may have a performance impact on a PC or notebook. The increased frequency of backups may result in an increase in overall storage quota usage. Meanwhile, there are two options to choose from when you want the backup job to stop. This feature is only available when you set a normal backup schedule. Let's switch this back to at. The default setting is until full backup completed, which means the backup job will only stop running when all selected files or folders or any subsequent changes are completely backed up, regardless of how long it takes. The other option will stop the backup job after a certain number, from 1 to 24 hours, even if the backup of your files or folder is not yet complete. For this example, we will use the default setting until full backup completed, to ensure that all the latest changes to our files and folders are fully backed up every day. For the run retention policy after backup setting, the best practice is to have it enabled. With this setting turned on, AhsayACB will permanently and immediately delete files and folders in the retention area that have exceeded the retention period to better manage the backup storage quota after each backup job. We will be talking more about retention policy later on. Click OK to continue. Then, click Next. For the destination, the default backup mode is sequential, as we are only using one storage destination, which is the default storage destination Ahsay Drive. So we will stick with the default setting. However, if we were to use multiple storage destinations, for example, both Ahsay Drive and local mapped removable, it is recommended to switch your backup mode to concurrent. To allow AhsayACB to back up your data to both destinations simultaneously, this approach helps reduce the overall backup time, which minimizes any performance impact to Windows. Click the plus sign to add a storage destination. Ahsay Drive is already selected. As I have mentioned that we're using this default storage destination, we'll just leave it on default. Click OK. Then click Next to continue. Open Direct is disabled by default. We will leave this on default. Click Next to continue. Now, for encryption, we will use the default setting, which is the most secured option as it uses AES 256-bit encryption technology and a randomly generated encryption key made up of 44 alphanumeric characters. Take note, once you have selected the encryption settings and your backup set is created, it cannot be changed afterwards. If you need to change the encryption settings, then a new backup set must be created. Your data will have to be backed up again from scratch. Click Next. It is very important to keep a copy of your encryption key before clicking Confirm. If you forget or lose your encryption key, you will lose the ability to access and restore your backup data. Click Confirm to continue. When the backup set is successfully created, you will see this confirmation page. You now have the option to back up your files right away by clicking Backup Now, or wait for the scheduled backup to start. Let's close this window and go back to the backup sets page. Select the backup set that you have just created. We're going to have a quick look at some of the important settings on our file backup set, such as Windows User Authentication, Temporary Directory, Retention Policy, and Volume Shadow Copy. AhsayACB uses the Windows User Authentication login credentials to make sure that it has sufficient permission to access several things, including all files and folders that are selected in the backup source, the temporary folder location, and the backup destination from a network drive that is accessible from backup machine via LAN. If files and/or folders selected are located on a network drive, the login credentials for the Windows User Authentication must have permission to access network resources. Enter your Windows account password to provide AhsayACB sufficient permission. Apart from the Windows User Authentication, there are also other features that you have to know about. Click Others and you'll see the Retention Policy, Temporary Directory, and Volume Shadow Copy. Every time AhsayACB runs a backup job, any previously backed up files or folders that are subsequently modified or deleted on Windows are moved to the retention area where they can still be restored. The retention policy determines how long these deleted or modified files or folders are stored in the retention area before they are permanently removed. There is only one retention policy for AhsayACB. Simple, where the retained files are removed after a specified number of days or backup jobs. The default retention policy setting is 7 days. Increasing the duration of your retention policy increases the likelihood of recovering older versions of deleted or modified files or folders. The trade-off is increased storage usage and costs. For this example, we will be using the default setting. As for the temporary directory, you can see that the default location is in a local destination. This is the best practice, as using a network drive could affect the backup and restore performance. The remove temporary files after backup is enabled by default in order to keep the temporary drive clear. Meanwhile, volume shadow copy is enabled by default. You might want to leave it enabled because this allows AhsayACB to support open file backups. What does this mean? Even if the files you've selected for backups are currently opened, in use, or locked by a third-party application at the time of the backup, they will still be backed up without any issues. This ensures that your file backups are always complete and reliable. Now that you have learned a bit more about the other important backup settings and how to adjust them based on your preferences, it's time to back up your files. As we typed in our Windows account password earlier, let's close this window by clicking on Save. From the AhsayACB home screen, select Backup. Then click the backup set that you have just created. The Run Retention policy is not enabled, but since this is the first backup job, no data exists in the retention area. So, there's no need to enable Run Retention policy after backup. However, for future backups, you should not forget to enable it. Click Backup. Once done, you'll see under the Load tab that the backup has been completed successfully. And that's how you create a file backup for Windows on AhsayACB. With Ahsay, your data is fully protected. Armed with the latest technology like immutable backups, where your backup data will never be encrypted, deleted, or modified for total protection against hackers and ransomware. Strong AES 256-bit data encryption ensures your data is encrypted during transit and when your data is stored to prevent anyone from reading your data without your permission. Two-factor authentication to prevent anyone from accessing your data without your permission. Multi-destination backups to store your backup data in more than one storage destination and across many geographical regions for maximum protection against natural disasters, fire, or conflicts. And data deduplication, a feature that removes duplicate copies of data that helps you save up to 90% of your storage space, with significant savings on your storage costs as well as much faster backups. That's why you should choose Ahsay. Your data is safe with us.